All right, we're in Chapter 3 on Objective 3.2, and we're going to talk about revenue and expense recognition principles. So, the issue here is if you're going to recognize the impact of non cash transactions, you have to start to develop some guidelines for that. The first thing I want to point out, though, before we get to the revenue and expense recognition principles, is that we're going to report at regular time intervals, which is under the time period concept. So we are going to report accounting information at regular intervals. And for external reporting, that's typically quarterly and annually. Um, that is going to drive some of our expense and revenue recognition because if we have to make a report at a certain time, then we have to start looking at what transactions had an impact during that time period. So for revenue, the rule is you're going to record revenue when it is earned. What does that mean? Well, for 99% of the cases, when the seller has provided the good or the service, and the buyer either has paid or made a believable commitment to pay. So, paid would include cash transactions. A believable commitment to pay would be a sale on account. So, you provide an item or a service to a customer, and they promise to pay you in 30 days. For expense recognition, we're going to recognize expense along with the revenues generated by either the using up of a resource or assumption of a liability. Now, some of the expenses we're going to see are recognized simply as a function of the passage of time. So, for example, if you have a retail store and you pay rent, it does not matter whether or not a customer bought anything in that month. You're still going to have rent expense. So, rent expense is something that is typically a function of passage of time. If you are selling things, like let's say you're selling an iPad, um, some expenses are recognized as a particular revenue generating action occurs. So when you give the customer the iPad, the cost of that iPad to you is an expense. So the action of transferring the item to the customer uh, drives the recognition of the expense. So some activities are create expenses, and sometimes expenses just occur as a result of the passage of time. We're going to apply these revenue principles and expense recognition principles generally to our accrual accounting and our adjustments that we're about to see. And as you learn more and more, there'll be details to each transaction. But these revenue principles and expense recognition principles are an important part of GAAP.